What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this wonderful session of Standing in the Six. Today we got a special guest for you. We got Brine Hamilton. Mike, do you remember Brine? Brine with a Rhine.
Brine spelled B-R-I-N-E.
If you say too fast, it says like Brian.
Yeah, Brine.
Brine. But who is Brine?
Brine Hamilton, great guy that we know, used to work with us on the floor. He's essentially a healthcare security. What would you say? He's working toward a specialist.
He would be considered a healthcare specialist.
Yeah.
IHSS president-elect. He has been
El Presidente.
top 40 under 20. I'm screwing all this up, but he is a healthcare guru.
Top 20 under 40?
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. I guess you're going to have to find out in this episode what it is.
So, Brian, amazing family guy,
Yes.
and a pleasure to talk with him. We're just going to talk life and see what's cooking in his world.
That's right.
All right.
Next on Standing in the Six.
Straight out of the T-Dot.
That's what it is.
Live from the six boroughs.
Don't go nowhere.
For sure. Welcome to Standing in the Six with your hosts, Michael and Constantine.
Okay.
All right. Well,
All right. So, on three.
enough of the sound checks. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on this beautiful day today.
Yeah,
Is that better, Mike? Is my intro better?
There you go. So
Okay.
nice. He did it twice.
All right, great. Welcome on this beautiful day. I would be so happy, and I will be happy, as I announce our very special guest today, Brine Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
Brine, I'm so happy you're on the show, bro. A lot of people don't know who Brine is in our close circles, but we're gonna make sure by the end of the show today that the four nations of the country all know who you are. So, how we knew Brine is that Sentinel Security, which was our affiliation company, basically we hired you directly to come on board, and since then the relationship has grown. Okay, the sad thing is that we haven't seen you work for us in a while, but we understand. But I thought today would be an incredible opportunity just to share our experiences with you, kind of get to know a little bit more about you, and also for those who are listening, Brine also has his own podcast. So he has a podcast called the
The Healthcare Security Cast.
Healthcare Security Cast. By the way, just as a disclaimer, I will mess up names and things all the time. Okay?
Yeah.
I know you. It's all
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I'm Mike.
Yes.
But yeah. Okay.
By the way, again, we're kind of rusty right now. We were supposed to start filming earlier in the year, but COVID kicked in, which will be another topic. But yes, to my right,
Yes.
Mr. Michael Reventar.
Hey.
And we are very happy, Mike, to have you back.
Yeah.
I can't remember in the early episodes if you had your head was shaved or not, but
It was a plethora of looks.
plethora.
Yeah.
Yes.
Plethora.
Plethora.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that we didn't film a couple weeks ago when I had to have my funny hairdo.
Oh
but
yes.
It's all good.
And we'll probably go into that one as
Yeah.
well.
Whatever.
But Brine, you do have those two podcasts. Throw them out there, right, just so we can hear this again, because I already forgot it.
Yeah, for sure. So the Healthcare Security Cast is
Yes.
is kind of the one that I started off with. I started doing it at the beginning of 2019.
Okay.
So we've done over 70 episodes now,
Okay.
and
Nice.
it's focused on healthcare security. So for anybody who's not sure what that is, people always get confused and think it's the cyber piece, but it's the actual physical security officers that work in healthcare facilities. So it's kind of tailored to the leaders and the people who work in those industries.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is the Proactive Security Podcast, which I co-host with Mike Hodges. Mike Hodges is based out of Athens, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a healthcare security director, and we talk about workplace violence. It's that one's a monthly one.
Okay.
So we've done 4 episodes so far. And we're just keep going. That one's the 15th of every month. The Healthcare Security Cast, there's an episode, at least a minimum, every week.
Well, the amazing thing is that it's growing because, from what I understand, if my research is correct, you're in over 170 download countries that people are downloading from, correct?
That's correct.
Wow.
Your research is correct. So yes, it's been listened to in at least over 170 countries at this point, at least one time.
And over 12,000 downloads.
Over 12,000 downloads. Yeah, most of them in a good portion in the U.S., Canada being second, Ireland being third.
Yes.
And then it's just kind of a mismatch of the other 170 countries.
What do you think is the shared theme? Why they're all tuning in globally?
I think it's just kind of filling a need. What it's kind of evolved to, from my perspective, it's the resource that I wish I had when I was working in a healthcare security facility as a frontline officer, and even just growing through my career. So I think it's kind of filled that gap. It's a free resource for people, and I bring on a number of different guests. So we talk about healthcare security topics. We talk about different topics like leadership, LinkedIn,
Yep.
social media, just different things to really help the professional in all facets. So whether it's improving your security program or whether it's just developing personally or professionally, I like to focus on a security topic once a week, and then I'll supplement that with other topics, kind of ad hoc, if you will.
Okay. Yeah, nice. Is there any standout episodes that for you were like, okay, wow, it hit home, or you're just like, it made great impact?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the one of the more popular ones for a long time was episode 1 that I did with Paul Sarnice.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, Paul Sarnice is going to be on the anniversary episode with me. We're announcing winners of some IHSS memberships that we were giving away.
Mm-hmm.
But Paul Sarnice is just a really smart guy. He was one of the first people I interviewed. And, basically the way it started was I had this idea a couple of years ago, and, I tried to give it to other people to kind of run with, and nobody did.
Mm-hmm.
So come December, I'm a member of IHSS. I sit on the board of directors. That's the International Association for Healthcare Security and Safety.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was going to a board meeting, and I figured, you know what, I've been thinking of doing this podcast for a while, and I'm going to be in a room with 8 other professionals. This would be a great time to really capture that. So I was looking at my calendar, I was leaving in a few days, and, the great thing is we have Amazon now. So I logged on to Amazon. I had already done a bit of research, grabbed all the equipment I needed, ordered it. It came by the Tuesday. I flew it on Wednesday, did my first 3 interviews there, and then just kind of kept the momentum going.
Just made it happen. I mean, and for those, if anyone listening has not heard of Amazon, there's Amazon.com, Amazon.ca. It is, yeah.
And Amazon Prime. Let me ask you this, Brian, just as you're talking.
Yeah, for sure.
The healthcare industry, this is something that you've kind of narrowly focused in right now, okay? And I'm pretty sure you're keeping up to all the topics that are happening.
Yep.
All over the country right now, especially violence happening in the healthcare environments. Okay, what's your experience around that? I mean, you've been working directly in a hospital setting for years. Obviously, you're out of that right now. But what was your thoughts on that, doing that? Because a lot of people, it shocked me, and we'll find out. I'll tell you more about that as we get deeper. But
yeah, for sure.
What was your thoughts on that, being in that?
Well, I think the general public would be shocked in general at the amount of violence that occurs in the healthcare setting. What happens is a lot of healthcare staff, whether that's, whether you're looking at clinical staff, whether you're looking at nurses or frontline security officers or anybody, they're subjected to certain levels of violence. And the unfortunate thing is a lot of people accept it as just being part of their job. So there's a lot of underreporting that happens. Even the numbers that get reported are probably a small representation of what's actually occurring in our facilities. Now, you're seeing an increase in the reporting because people are getting more comfortable with reporting. And we're trying to eliminate the challenges with people reporting information. So making it easier for people to report. So that's also going to cause an increase in the numbers. But it's a serious thing. You see people who've been seriously injured. When you look at lost time injuries, again, the healthcare industry kind of leads the way, unfortunately, in that. So
wow,
it's something that we definitely want to get a handle on in the coming years. But it's not going to be an overnight process. But we're taking a lot of the right steps. But especially emerge nurses working in behavioral health units, mental health units, they get subjected to a disproportionate amount of violence.
Mm-hmm. Now, why are we even on the pulse of healthcare security?
Just because,
I mean, for us as a company.
I mean, you ask an excellent question, Mike. Excellent question. Which actually...
is this part of the plan? The whole plan?
It is. It is. We set this up so nicely. I mean, it's actually fooled me.
Yeah.
So to answer that question, I want to kind of go back a couple of steps into how we kind of evolved Sentinel Security into healthcare. So I'll never forget this. Brian, I'm going to share something. I don't think I've told you this. I've told some people, but I don't think you've ever heard this. So obviously, we're right now facing the last week of December. Country's back into lockdown mode.
Yep.
And
wonderful 2020 is about to commence.
Yes. And I remember when we first got the announcement that everything was going into lockdown. Being into as a company that specializes and focuses in corporate events and close protection, that disappeared. And I'll never forget this. I was probably the last week that things are about to completely get locked down. We've lost almost all our clients now because they have to lock themselves down, and all business is stopping. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do? So I remember just spending about a good solid week emailing everybody Everybody.
I'm gonna put some stats in there. In an afternoon, we lost 95% of our business.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And next afternoon, laid off in excess of 100 employees.
Yes.
Right. So it was just like dire times. And
That's right.
Yeah, it was bad.
That's right.
Yeah.
And after spending countless, I guess, of hours, probably I would say 16, 17-hour days, just emailing. I was in my basement and pretty much at the end of my rope. That's how it felt.
Yeah.
And I remember as that's happening, my wife comes down and she goes, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "I can't make any progress." And she starts to walk off. I mean, after we started talking, I'm just kind of fast tracking the story, but I started to break down and cry, just thinking, I'm done. Like there's nothing we can do here. The organization is going to fall apart. How do we sustain, right? And
Death is imminent.
yes.
Yeah.
So I remember just, they say sometimes a good cry, right, can just kind of like, it gets you to a sleep mode almost, right? So I remember going to sleep, waking up the next morning. It's a Saturday morning right now. And I'm just searching social media. And then there it pops up, the Healthcare Security Podcast.
Yeah. Really.
Yeah. It was what and then as soon as I saw that, I'm like, it was the animated cover of you, Brine. It wasn't your picture. It was the animated version of Brine, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as I saw that picture, and I can't remember what the podcast was about. I probably was 12,001 download, but I remember clicking, and as soon as I saw your picture and the intro, it hit me. I'm like, oh my goodness! I've been trying to find a way into the healthcare market, and there's a person right there I can speak to, which I know is you. So I call you up Saturday, and we have a conversation, and not even a couple of hours later, you made some calls and made some introductions, and then are we able to say the names?
We can leave the names out, I think.
Even company names?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would
Yeah,
leave them
that's
out.
probably
All right,
better.
we'll leave them all out.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to note is your voice was very raspy that morning post cry. It's
that's
just
right.
one of those things that happens, right?
That's right.
After
That's
a
right.
really good one,
Yes.
it's just
Yeah.
whatever. But it was worth it.
So, Brine, you connected us to an entity that opened up the doors for us, that was able to give life to the company to get us through, I guess, the wilderness experience of COVID. Right?
Yeah, it sounds like a UFO
Yeah,
right there.
exactly.
An entity. No, yeah.
Yeah.
For those that don't know how to compute that,
Yeah.
a large security company needed help, and we were able to backfill some of their overflow.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was in that time frame where we decided, you know what, the best, most, I would call it COVID-proof business to go after would be healthcare, right?
Right.
And sure enough, that started conversations, which opened some doors, which opened up more doors and opened up more doors. And it wasn't until we got the announcement officially in October that we were awarded a significant hospital contract that kind of got us back right into our feet, right? And this, Brine, all started basically, like I said, just from, the Healthcare Security Podcast.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's amazing.
And to me, Brine, I've spoken to you on the phone about this. I mean, I don't go into this much detail, but you really significantly put us onto our tracks, back on the tracks, I guess, right?
Yeah.
To kind of give us the flow. So I'm very thankful for you for that, Brine, today. And I wanted you to know that. I don't know if you ever knew the extent of it, but
Yeah.
100%.
Truly, I mean,
Right.
if it gave you a picture, it'd be like, those fish on the bottom of the shark that just tag along for the ride, right?
Yes.
I mean, just for survival.
Yeah.
We
yeah.
had to survive for months,
Yeah.
and just to keep people employed,
That's
So,
right.
Yeah.
So-
And I appreciate that. Like I didn't know the extent of it, so I'm glad that I was able to do something that was helpful during a tough time,
Yeah, man.
and that makes everything I'm doing worthwhile when I hear a story like that.
No,
So thank you.
absolutely.
It's funny how you never know, and not to say that it was menial in from your side, because you did speak on behalf of the company huge, and we're like an ambassador of us, we're really thankful.
Right.
But even if it was just like, oh yeah, I'll send a phone call. Sometimes we just don't know. It might be trivial and nothing to you, but it makes all the difference, man.
yeah.
Right? I was going to Starbucks the other day, and I was about to pay, and the lady said, oh yeah, it's only going to cost this much. Someone in front of you already paid for like half of it. That's never happened to me before.
Really?
And I remember I'm like, huh? And I'm like looking around, and I can't find who it was. So I'm like, I start like interrogating the Starbucks employee. I'm like, who was it? Because I'm trying to like play back the picture in my head. Maybe, was it that lady with her? And then she's like, I don't really remember. Okay, so, but I just think like, man, that like impacted me huge.
So you never, just as a side note here, you never saw who bought you the coffee?
No, I had no idea.
And can I just say, that's incredible. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
People, I'm finding a lot of things happen now where people want to capture on camera what they're doing to let other people know. That's kind of
I'm
like,
giving.
Yeah.
I'm giving.
That's kind of self-serving almost, right? It's like I want to do something to kind of make sure other people see. But when you do something and nobody knows other than you, that is when it's the most special.
There's an amazing scripture about that. It says, when giving, don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's no better way to say it.
That's right.
Thank you, Bible, for. No, but I like to say that it was only like maybe $5-6. It like impacted me. I remember thinking like, whoa! It like no matter what frame of mind I was in, it catapulted me into a better frame of mind. Just like literally, so much so I called my wife and I'm like, look, and I had to tell her what happened. My kids are on the line listening as well, and they're like celebrating with me that someone just kind of paid for it. And I just say that like that whole pay it forward kind of thing, and you just don't know. It might just be, I'll send an email, I'll send a text, I'll say something good, right? And it just like. It could totally change someone's life, like for real.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it impacts me when you tell me, $5 to $6 didn't pay for all of your drink. That's crazy to me.
No.
But no, it's one thing I learned from teaching, because I teach at a couple of colleges as well.
That's right.
Is that you never know like what you're doing or the message that you're giving or how you're trying to benefit somebody, how it's actually going to impact them. I spent a lot of time just thinking like I just hope to keep these kids awake at the end of the day. But getting the messages afterwards, because I try to stay in touch with as many of my students as possible when they tell me that something I said or did was a spark for them and really got them focused or impacted their career. Like those things, you can't replace those. So but if I in that situation when you said, when I said to you, I'm gonna make some phone calls, like I did. I got right away, got on the phone and started making the phone calls, trying to do the introduction. So. Yeah, no, I was really pushing because, I'm part of the Sentinel family. I worked for the company, and I don't want to see anybody have to suffer needlessly, right? So,
right.
And I'm glad it was able to have an impact.
No, Brian.
Yeah,
so
it was amazing.
Again, that is a big thank you. But in order to go backtrack to Mike's original question, which is why am I asking that question? Well, because we never ever thought that we would be into the healthcare industry, right? And the funny thing is that I always fought going outside of what we do, right? But just like when COVID came in and everyone's reflecting and everyone's thinking, what do we do? How do I shift? How do I maneuver? How do I pivot? That this move, I'm so like beyond grateful for. And the people that are representing the front line, that are working in the healthcare environment, they're finding the work extremely purposeful.
Yes.
Not to say that the work that you do in events is not. It's just that to know that you're truly helping and being part of something.
You're serving the community.
You're serving. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And to me, that is where I find extremely rewarding. And we've had so many of our staff forward like thank you notes and gift cards and this just by like them, being kind. Do you know what I mean? Showing empathy, which we're going to get into in a little bit as well, because that seems to be like a big I guess Pee Wee Herman's word of the day kind of thing, right?
I remember that.
Today's secret word is
pretty good.
Yeah. But empathy for us is a big piece. So, look, at the end of the day, man, that is why, and we're gonna and why I'm really interested right now. I
wanted to kind of go back to what you were saying, Brian, about most people wouldn't know about the violence in a healthcare facility. When we first learned about it, we couldn't believe that, yes, police, for sure, they would face violence, right? People in corrections, people working where there's incarcerated people, they're going to have violent situations. And then to find out that healthcare, that nurses experience 3 times more abuse than those two industries combined, police and corrections, that blew our mind. We were like, what? Because the picture of police, if anyone had to just paint like the consummate police officer, imagine now corrections guy. It's kind of like that guy with maybe more tattoos, right? Okay. Now picture a nurse, right? And to me, it was like they experienced more times while they're trying to provide care. I've said this before. I have aunts who are nurses. I have cousins who are nurses, and on both sides of the border, Canada and U.S. And to think that they are in the line of fire for a violent situation, the truth is I've never even considered it. Like I've never even thought that. I was complete naive to, I guess, some of those challenges. I mean, why is it so bad? I mean, like I don't want to paint it like it's,
for sure.
But why does it happen?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because when I used to tell people what I did when I was a frontline security officer, and I told people I'm a security officer at a hospital, the question I would get most often is, why do you need security at a hospital? Right? So
amazing. There you go.
So yeah, it's a common theme that people don't realize what actually happens in a healthcare facility. There's a number of reasons why you need a security presence, but to just kind of answer your question and talk about the violence. Well, most people don't want to be in a hospital. The majority of the time when people are coming into the hospital, it's because something has gone wrong. Right. Unless somebody's having a baby, that's really one of the few positive examples of why somebody's going into a healthcare facility, and even those ones go sideways sometimes.
Right.
Like I'll reference my old boss Martin Green. Something that he used to say all the time was, you have the husband and the wife when the baby's born, and then the father of the baby shows up, and guess what? It turns into a violent situation, right?
JRE.
Oh my goodness.
Exactly. So you have those situations. Actually, there was one that I remember from a facility that I worked at where there was a police officer who used to come in quite frequently. He was known by the security staff, and his wife had a baby. We were the ones who were giving him access to get up to the labor and delivery ward. And I guess the best way to explain this was there was an ethnic mismatch. So this, obviously, when the child was born, this wasn't his child, right? So it's one of those things that does happen. But no, sorry, I'm deviating so much from your question, but
it's all good. Yeah, I love it.
But these things happen. Like this
is a colored example. Right?
Yes, it's an emotionally charged environment, especially when you're in the merge, and it gets the staff who are working and doing this every day. Like if someone breaks their arm and comes into the healthcare facility, the nurses see this a lot. The security staff who are working there see it a lot. All of the staff get kind of not necessarily numb to it, but it's very normal.
Mm-hmm.
If you break your arm and you go to the hospital, or I don't want to speak this, but a better example is a child. Yes. You have to take your child into the hospital. As a parent, there's a level of anxiety that comes with that. And, if you run into the wrong staff member who doesn't know how to exercise empathy, what you're talking about,
right.
And it's like, okay, take a number, take a seat. You feel like you feel like they're being very dismissive of you right away. So again, there's situations like that cause a bit of tension. And again, there's just so many things like long wait times. Everything is like, this needs to be done now. Like the number of people who came to me, it's like, this is an emergency. This is urgent. When I was a frontline security guard working in the emerge department, like, I have to calmly explain this is an emergency department. Everybody who's here, who's been here waiting for 2 hours before you showed up has an emergency. So, we're doing our best to deal with the situation, but at the end of the day, you are going to have to wait. Right. So some people don't take that well. And then there's the people who get brought in by police, get brought in by ambulance, and some of them don't want to be there either. You may have for example, a person who's homeless, who is, they've used some kind of substance and they're passed out on the street. Well, people are going to see that. They're going to call 911. And, the paramedics may have dealt with this person 100 times. They know that this person doesn't want to go to the hospital, but now they have an obligation to take them to the hospital.
Wow. Okay.
So then, those people, they come to and they're agitated. Some people who are, one of the big things is the narcotics that people are using. And, they get brought in, someone gets given Narcan and they come out of their high and the aggression level is up here. Right. So there's so many situations that just organically just become violent. It's, and just so many other little things. Like, again, nobody's perfect in the healthcare environment or in any environment. So there are going to be times where, us as the healthcare workers are the ones who escalate things just by the way that we say things. So one of the things that it's taught is that you have to be aware of your own biases and how you're being perceived. And again, empathy is something that comes into play, and emotional intelligence.
Well, I'll say this just because, the word empathy and, also working in an environment. Have you ever Mike and Brine, have you guys ever gone to a hospital, and just think of this, and your encounter with the charge nurse or with the registration is very cold? Like,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So to me,
As cold as the hospital floor.
right. So what I can tell you is this. It's been very apparent to me as of late that, of course, doing the job for many, many years, you can get desensitized and cold, right?
Oh yeah.
You've heard every single complaint. Everyone's needy, right? And it's just like having your kids being needy 24/7 on every single time. That is kind of the environment of the hospital. However, when you get desensitized, you can also start to, give the response that is also desensitized.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, which that triggers then a reaction, right? So we actually had on the show earlier Dr. Brian Goldman, who his whole entire book, The Power of Kindness, is all about him being accused that he's not kind, and for him, until it was actually told that he could go into the rhythm of just him. Sorry, unfortunately,
Yeah, I guess it broke his autopilot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think for anybody working in a healthcare environment or in an environment where you're helping others, you got to have that radar on all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or else
Yeah.
you're going to create the situation for you. It's going to it can go this way, it can go this way. And our people now on the front line are reporting, because they're coming on this completely with the empathy radar, right? They're finding great success in dealing with situations, right? Where somebody maybe that, maybe have done the job for years, it's like, oh man, another baby crying, or oh yeah, I get it. You cut your finger. So do these other guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah. This guy's got a hammer in his skull. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anything could happen there, right?
Yeah. So to me, I think also as humans, we should also just kind of reset sometimes, especially in those kind of environments.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did you notice at all in your time just people just kind of slowly getting desensitized? And I'm not talking about security. I'm talking about anybody in healthcare, doctors, nurses, whatever.
Oh yeah. Well, it's again. I worked at I worked at a couple of large healthcare facilities, so there's a lot of staff, and it's like anywhere else, right? You have your good employees, you have kind of the people in the middle, and you have the employees who aren't as strong.
That's right.
So, just given that, you're going to have variance. You're going to have people who just get desensitized and aren't able to separate the fact that, even though they're getting the same complaint for the 100th time that day, that it's the person's first time making that complaint.
Right.
So it's, yeah, you definitely do see that. There's a great deal of that. Now, the one thing that you made me think of, are you familiar with Malcolm Gladwell? The writer?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So in his book, Blink, I believe it was, there's this part where and I'm not going to remember the stats. I'm not going to be able to quote them verbatim, but he was talking about doctors who were sued for malpractice. And the comparison in the book was that the only differentiator, it wasn't the ability of the physicians. The only differentiator was for the ones who had a high number of these malpractice lawsuits versus the ones who had none at all, was the amount of time they spent with their patients. And it was only like 2 minutes. So they were spending a little bit more time with their patients, giving them a little bit more attention.
Yeah.
Patients were more forgiving when something didn't work out.
Wow.
Just on that note about time with your patient, the other day I went to go see my family doctor, and I swear to you, not one time did she even look at my face.
Oh,
She was
wow.
looking at the screen, and she had this sort of their auto attendant, I guess on her microphone is called Shiloh, I guess. I'm just throwing a name out.
Okay.
So she goes to me. So what are your problems? And this is me, and I'm the doctor.
I have a growth.
Shiloh, she has a growth.
Are you dictating to it? Really?
Yes, and he's dictating into it. Literally, that's how the conversation was. She never made eye contact. Everything that I would say, she would repeat it into the mic. It would auto-populate it. And then at that point, she'd look at me and go, here's your prescription, or here's whatever. And it was the most cold experience.
What?
Yes.
And did you have to bow and thank Shiloh for being the doctor?
No,
what?
but-
Kiss the pinky before you
know,
go.
Mike,
exactly.
hold on. There wasn't a smile. It was literally all a cold business interaction. Get out, next person in. That to me
Okay,
is
so you're
kind of
saying
what-
the human became a robot to assist AI technology.
Literally. So Elon Musk, if you're listening, okay. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So to me, if that,
I've never heard of that they do it that way.
Yeah, well, this is how they're doing it. It's everything, and again, no eye contact, nothing. You know what I mean?
That's awful. Yeah, my family doctor is fantastic. She's the best rated family doctor just by the online reviews, and in the city, and it was, we just happened to find her by chance. She was 5 minutes from where we used to live, but
Perfect.
now it's, we're not in the same city anymore, but we still go to that same
She's
doctor.
here in Toronto?
No, she's in Cambridge.
Okay.
Oh wow, okay.
So, yeah,
but worth the drive, right?
Oh, absolutely
Yeah.
worth the drive. We can get an appointment when we need one, and we get the time that we need. She doesn't rush us out. And
Okay.
She knows our family. She knows all 4 of our kids. So.
Right.
Health care minus the care. That's bizarre.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
Yeah.
So how did it feel just being a number?
Literally just that. It's like, all I'm saying is it does not help the cause of healthcare. Look, when we hear this, and I'm going to throw something out, it may be a devil's advocate thing. Some people might hear this and be like, are you serious on it? But I'm going to ask a serious question. When we hear that nurses, doctors, and anyone in healthcare is 3 times more likely to be assaulted, is that provoked? You know what I mean? Are they getting assaulted from provoking through their response? Not all of them are, obviously, but could somebody be making the situation worse because they're not showing that empathy, right? Here's your meds, take them down, hurry up, put them. I mean, if that's happening, you know what I mean? The reaction.
You can incite it.
Yeah. So to me, like when you hear all this, Brine, what would you say is, in your opinion, something that needs to happen based on your experience to help a situation like
Well, I would say the example that you gave is there is definitely an element of that, but I would say it's the exception rather than the rule.
Okay.
I think some of those behaviors come from dealing with years of violence, right?
Right.
If you're someone who's been brutally assaulted and maybe you didn't have the proper supports in place many years ago in the facility that you worked at, you may have a different view towards your job, and it's going to be reflected in your actions and in your speech and everything that you do. But no, I think we all have a part to play. Everybody working in facilities, again, we keep coming back to the buzzword that you brought up, empathy. You need to be able to put yourself in the place of that person, and don't do things that are going to cause escalation. Now, I know we talk a lot about de-escalation training as well. I think I wouldn't even say equally important. It's more important to handle things before they escalate. There was one guy I used to work with. He was a frontline security officer, and he was great at interacting with people when they were in the emergency department. So when they're waiting to be triaged or they're waiting to get admitted, he was one of the more active guys who would actually go out into the waiting room and just communicate with people. And I found whenever I worked with him, there was a lot less things going on. Like we didn't have as many problems because right from the get-go. And I think the first impressions, we talk about this a lot. First impressions matter.
Yes.
So when you come into the facility
Proactive.
and you're greeted by this guy, he's a smiling face, despite the fact that you may be coming in with a difficult challenge or a health concern. The first interaction is positive, and that really sets the stage. So even the way it worked was the individuals would come in and sit down, they'd be triaged, and then they'd come back out and wait to be called in after they were registered. Sometimes even if they had a negative interaction with that triage nurse, they came back out and he was there, and maybe he's able to de-escalate that again. So I think there's something to be said for non-escalation and really just making people feel comfortable when they come in. So that's and you don't always have that opportunity. Again, if somebody's being brought in after they've just been given Narcan and they're being wheeled right to the back, they wake up and they're violent, you don't have that opportunity, but there are a lot of situations where you do.
Okay. Yeah, but being proactive and establishing rapport, essentially that way, then you have less problems.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it makes sense, but it takes work, right? It takes someone who's actually going to be on and engaging with everybody versus just call me when you need something cleaned up.
Yeah, exactly. Right? It's work, and it's hard in the beginning, but it's easier. If you put in that investment when the individual comes in, it makes it easier later on in your shift when they don't have a negative reaction, or they start to escalate and then they see you and then it brings them back down.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this, Brine, because obviously you've been involved in healthcare for quite a bit. Would you say that there is a lack of training in the healthcare industry?
I would say there's a lack of training in the security industry in general. Okay. It's not necessarily that there's a lack, but it's not standardized and it's not consistent.
Right.
So you'll have requirements for training. Say, for example, if you're responding to an RFP, it may just ask for certain training, but if it doesn't really spell it out, you'll get a different mismatch of training from different companies. Whereas, someone says in their RFP, you need to have use of force training. Well, one company's use of force training may be a 40-hour course, which is very in-depth. Whereas another one might just be, we show our staff a video. We show them a
Yes.
2-hour video, and then
Yeah.
we give them their certificate after they do an e-learning test, right? So
Yeah.
there's not really consistency, and it's really, I think that's something that's really hard to do, but it's something that needs to be in the forefront of people's mind in the years to come. Like, it's something that we really have to do, especially I think in what I would like to see in healthcare, at least, is a very prescriptive baseline minimal level of training. So
Yeah, a base standard.
yeah, a base standard. If you want to expand upon that because it's required for your facility, or if you're at a facility where it's not as busy and you don't have as much going on, you don't have an emergency department, you at least want to have that baseline level of training, so the guards or your officers are able to respond to whatever may come through the door. But you may, and then you have the larger facilities who have the mental health, have the emergency department, where you need to go more in depth and have more training, more skill development for things that are more likely to happen in those facilities.
In all the training that you've heard that has happened in healthcare, have you ever heard of any training that focuses on empathy?
That focuses on empathy. I've seen it as a part of a lot of training.
Right.
I don't think I've seen one where it's the focus, but I think all of them touch on it in some way,
Right.
even if they don't use the word empathy. But I think most of them actually do right now.
Right. But the reason why I bring that up is because for us, how we kind of got onto the empathy train, right?
Yeah, exactly.
was through Steve Somerville and his program,
Yeah.
Stay Safe. And, Steve's a massive, massive advocate on, displaying empathy in work, right? It doesn't have to be just healthcare, right? So for us, we really, for us to prepare ourselves to get into healthcare, wanted to make that a big staple piece, a good foundation piece into basically, getting our people completely, familiarized, I guess, with those things. So we basically started putting together empathy training sessions where,
that's great.
we utilize our theater downstairs, and we would bring in actors and recreate scenarios. And then
That got very real, and we videotaped everything. We had
Yeah.
like literally dozens of hours of scenarios.
yeah, and the funny thing is, even though our security 100% knew there was cameras and there was actors, at the beginning, man, they were having a hard time with it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They were having a hard time, and
Yeah.
it was always coming back to like policy or structure, or opposed
Yeah.
to just the human element.
Yeah.
But Steve, which kind of pioneered a lot of this for us, he would act as the kind of like the coach, right,
Mhm.
with the whistle, and he'd be right there just to kind of catch basically anyone that may have kind of wandered off a bit, just change the thinking on the spot. So when we did these sessions enough, it would kind of, if you look back at the game tape to what they are now, it transformed them
Mhm.
completely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, I personally am a big believer in this right now, and I actually like we kind of want to make it like our one of our missions or mandates to kind of see this kind of get more pushed out, but not just in healthcare, because everyone dealing with anything, if they have that little bit of that, you know what I mean? It can bring a situation to your favor.
There's a universal message in it. I think it kind of just doing that type of training
Yeah.
exposed something to us that, in our little world right now, going into healthcare, because it was like paramount. We needed to prepare. We were afforded through the pandemic, okay, and we were able to do some of the staff received in excess of 500 hours of training,
Yeah.
which is like
It's
We-
unheard of.
we
Yeah.
probably will never have that again.
No.
But in its own weird way, we created our League of Shadows. Okay,
Yes.
Batman Begins.
Yeah.
Shout out. Okay, I see a mountain behind you. That's why it reminded me of with Liam Neeson.
Yes.
And in that training, it exposed, like, I think, just to give credit to Steve Somerville, it was kind of by chance even happening. It was pretty serendipitous, just the way he kind of asked about what we're doing, how it happened. It was just some exchange of equipment, right? In a Pickering parking lot
Yeah.
that literally blossomed into Steve taking the reins and saying, okay, I'm going to pour in, because we were willing. Okay.
Yeah.
And we make a joke. It just, we kind of presented as like Daniel-san and Miyagi appeared. Okay.
Yeah.
And we literally said, we don't have any previous experience here. Show us, what does it take to do it? And he led with empathy. And that's kind of like, we probably will pump out something related to this to be something that's beneficial to the whole industry,
Mm-hmm.
but a type of de-escalation that is leading with empathy.
Yeah.
That would be the main thrust of it. Now look at our team. Kind of 5-star, high-profile environments, always wearing suits. It was about like your shoes looking nice and understanding. Like, everyone here at this party has a lawyer on speed dial. Okay, and just that dynamic.
Yeah.
And then now guys get fitted for tactical uniform. They're putting on bulletproof vests. They're feeling like that utility belt. And just like a 13-year-old who picks up a gun for the first time, or BB gun, okay, and there's an immature mind that is trying to think, oh, this is power.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our guys like just stood different. They put the vest on, and they kind of fell hook, line, and sinker to all of the things.
The stereotypes.
Yeah. Okay. Having someone like Steve guide it and says like, I'll give you an example. The first day of scenarios, we did hours of scenarios where two security officers are outside on an adjacent floor.
Yep.
They get called on radio. They respond into the theater where we set it up. And let's just say it wasn't stellar. Some did well, some did very poorly.
Yeah.
All of them didn't do one thing. This is the constant. And Steve, with his whistle, at the very end would say, "Okay, time."
Yeah.
And he'd say, "Did you ask his name?"
Yeah.
Right? The subject, the person who needed help or was being a problem in the hospital, in the scenario. And people would look at him like blankly. And he's like, it goes a long way just to be a human. Be a human first before your security.
Yeah.
Just ask their name, right? And like that, just to give you an idea, was just where we started, But what I love about that is if you never deviated from just that one little pointer, ask someone's name before any interaction, whether it's your order didn't go well at Starbucks, whatever it is, right? Like, you have a falling out, your kids, get in a fight with another kid, and you meet the other parent, and like these are all like good things within humanity that could go a long way. Hey, before we talk, look, I'm Michael. What's your name? You know what I mean, right? And and literally next day of scenarios, this is what's happened. Guys get a call. We got code white in the theater. Code white guys come in. They walk up and they see a guy like basically hands in the pocket, hoodie on, and this is the first thing. Hey, sir, I'm Michael. What's your name? What's your name? And it was literally like the other ditch. They're just like, they're not even paying attention to any of the danger. It's just like, give me your name, buddy. Then I've done my duty, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of all the training, though, this is the feedback that we had from the team that took the floor, that actually went to the hospital. They said, we over-prepared. And they had this like confidence. They're like, we trained, we practiced harder than we played. I mean, all of us know the sports analogy.
Yeah, yeah.
We know the greats, Kobe, all these guys did it. And in our industry, because it is prevalent that there is no training, or it's not enough, or it's outdated, or it's not standardized. And there's like, so to have a team that has like kind of gone in this League of Shadows cocoon for a time, headed up. So I guess Steve Somerville's Liam Neeson in this scenario, right?
Yeah.
But literally, like, it was challenging, dude. When we did the trainings, people cried. People like froze and said like, I don't know what to do, and they felt like the shame of not knowing that. And like, some people got really aggressive, and in front of the group, looking at game tape, they realized, they went too far. Some scenarios, guys got stabbed. Like, it literally, like, the patient had something sharp in their hands and was repeatedly stabbing in the scenario. Okay, air quotes for those listening.
Yeah.
And the guard, who's the response guard, was getting stabbed several times, just like a real life scenario, and actually looked to Steve with his mouth open, like, while he's getting stabbed.
Yeah.
And Steve's like, okay, like, do something. Okay. So, I mean, it was actually pretty telling. For us, it was just like, and again, look, we didn't go through it personally, the scenarios. We kind of moderated and put it together. But how beneficial was it to see, anyone having that? Like, we counted like just a great privilege to be afforded the time that people could do it. But then now we're thinking, how do we make this a constant? Again, we don't want to make it like we're better than any other company. We had a privilege to be able to do this. A number of things just maybe by fluke came together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We had the facility, we had the trainer, we had no other work.
Right.
We had no other work for these guys to work. And in order to keep them employed, they got paid to train. Yes, they got paid for those 500 hours. Okay. Thanks, government, for little cues.
Yeah.
Wiki. So I say that though, but there's great benefit though, and we can say like firsthand. Imagine just now taking a guard and putting them to a client and never training them.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of the training, right? Like you get to experience that before you're out in the field. Like, could you imagine if that scenario comes up and the first time it happens is when they're actually on the job?
Yes. First time. Yeah. You make all your mistakes, every single one, only by trial and error. Right.
Yeah.
I know.
No, it was it's great, and Steve's an excellent trainer. He really knows his stuff. I didn't have Steve as a trainer when I was coming up, but I got to meet him a few years ago, and but I was fortunate. I had a guy named Mike Tebow who he heads up a company, Strategic Risk Protection, and
Are they based in the U.S.?
No, they're based in Ontario.
Okay.
So I think Mike and Steve probably know each other just through through being in the industry.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very very similar kind of things that you're saying.
Yeah.
One of the things that really helped me was he taught us to greet people and introduce yourself, try to get their name in the beginning the same way that Steve does, and I found that was something that was really helpful. I remember there was one specific incident where we had a complaint that somebody had a knife in their room. So it was an elderly gentleman. I went and I introduced myself, and when I introduced myself, he held his hand out. So first I kind of jumped back, but he was reaching out to shake my hand.
Okay.
But he had the knife in that same hand, but he was like trying to shake my hand.
Right.
So I just introduced myself, and I
goodness.
was like, okay, why do you have the knife? And he
Yeah.
explained, he gave me some kind of flimsy reason for having the knife. I'm like, can I have it? And he's like, yeah. He just gave it to me.
Right.
So crisis averted.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Yes.
but it just came down to that the greeting, introducing yourself, asking for the name. I'll give you another example too. There was a gentleman who used to come in. He used to frequent one of the facilities that I worked in, and he would yell a lot. He was generally he was an individual who would use different substances and then get brought in by EMS and just have to he'd have to wait in emerge. We'd have to medically clear him before he could leave. He didn't necessarily want to be there, so I'd try to appease him by feeding him. But either way,
That's a tough scenario.
yeah, he would be yelling a lot. Now there was one. I remember it was one Christmas that he was. It was the Christmas season. He was in the emergency waiting room, and there was an odor that came from him. So the section that he was sitting in, everybody had kind of moved, and they were all sitting in the triage area, which they weren't supposed to sit in. But when I realized, okay, he's over there and he's probably a little bit ripe, so I'm not going to bother anybody for sitting where they are. And he the reason why he got my attention was because the TV was so loud, and he was watching A Christmas Story, which is my favorite Christmas movie.
Hey.
So I went over there and I spoke with him. I already knew him by name. He knew who I was, and I was like, oh, this is my favorite Christmas movie. He's like, oh, this is mine too. And I was like, can I turn it down a little bit? And he's like, I can barely hear it now. So after a couple of years of dealing with him, I realized he's hard of hearing. This is why he yells.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So I was able to, have a conversation with him. I got him to turn down the TV a little bit. But after that, because I had taken that time, I never had an issue with him again the rest of the time that I dealt with him. He ended up passing away a few years later. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the rest of the time that I ever interacted with him, it was always positive. He always listened to whatever direction I gave him because I had given him that time in the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, it goes a long way, man.
Now,
Right.
and to share one more example, this is kind of unrelated, but this is a couple months ago, my son was playing hockey with the neighbors outside, and my car was parked on the road. So I reversed my car into the driveway because I didn't want this plastic puck hitting my car, right? So I parked it in the driveway. I go to do groceries. The weather just gets crazy. It starts pouring. And I get back home and I see the basketball net's blown over.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, good thing it didn't hit the car. I park the van and I see this big dent in the car that is shaped like a basketball pole. So I was like,
Oh no.
yeah. So in trying to avoid the car getting hit by a hockey puck, it got hit by a basketball net. So just all of that to say that there are situations where you can take all the preparations, do the right things, and things still go wrong.
Right.
And it's a very real scenario, not just in life, but especially in healthcare security. Like you can do all the right things and things can still go wrong. So sometimes you're just trying to make the least bad decision in a scenario.
Yeah.
No, that's good, man.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, just because something just popped into my head. Now, Brine, we just finished Christmas, right?
Yep.
You were born on Christmas Day, weren't you?
I was. Yep.
Yes.
Nice,
Brine
man.
was born on
Happy
Christmas
belated birthday,
Day.
man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, do you get double the gifts out of curiosity? Side note?
Historically, no. Generally, what happens is people tend to forget because obviously it's the holidays. People don't generally remember your birthday. Thanks to social media, people do now. So I end up responding to a lot of messages, and I
goodness.
appreciate everybody who takes the time to wish me happy birthday. But as a kid, we'd often end up at places where people either weren't expecting us or they didn't plan for us to be there. So what would happen a lot of times is, I'd be watching people open presents on my birthday, which was, as a kid wasn't fun.
I never thought about that.
Never really had a birthday party. My first birthday party was just a few years ago. My wife threw for me when I turned 35.
Yeah, because the Christmas party takes precedent, right?
Yeah, and it's tough to plan a party. Like, everybody's out of school.
No, I know.
So my parents would always bring
You're competing with Jesus. I mean, that's
that's one thing you're not going to win.
Yeah, that's
right?
exactly.
I accept that a long time ago.
That's true.
Oh my goodness, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Not relevant, but a good question.
I mean, it's better than being born on those leap years, right? Where you're.
You have a birthday every
I'm
4
6.
years.
I'm only 6 years old.
Exactly.
So that has its advantages later in life, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, happy belated, man.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, I want to get Casey your insight. Thinking creatively, thinking, in an innovative type of way. You brought up Elon Musk. That's where he lives, right? I always thought that security has an interesting vantage point. You're paid to observe, right? So, from my experience being on the floor, people would just think, oh, you're just security. We're going to call you when there's a problem. We kind of totally changed that mold. You were a part of that, and we broke through just the stigma of being a goon, okay, and actually being a really good person and someone who's proactive and actually can provide customer service, set a great tone for an event or whatever's kind of happening, and you're almost like a facilitator. And I remember thinking, hold on, we talk to every level, frontline management, third party coming in, and we're. In a bizarre way, we have a seat that kind of touches everything. Yeah. Right? And I remember thinking, if we could do this really, really well, where we understood all these different worlds, how they culminated, we could be a great asset to all of them. Okay? And it's not just security in the traditional sense, locked in an office, sleeping, watching, the office reruns, whatever, and then just getting a call. Okay? And then getting in there and just trying to like make something happen and prove that we're... So we realized, again, the nature of security that we were doing, we were kind of the first face. Yeah. And it made sense. So we're like, okay, if we're going to be here, it's not what we always did. We had kind of like a doorman mentality kind of, because that's the industry that we were a part of. Yeah. But as it started kind of going up into more upscale environments, we realized, okay, look, we could be way more effective here. So I bring that up. We're getting that feedback now from the guys who are now in healthcare. It's a new environment, but they realize, wow, why be behind the 8 ball for everything? Like, also, if they just had better communication. Also, if we think that if there was just a way that when people came into this waiting area, someone said something to them, gave them basic directives, or maybe there's something on the board that understood, or they could and they're now starting to think because they're being paid to observe. And that, let me ask you, because you're not like directly on the front line anymore at all. I know that you've been kind of giving an oversight and having a broader perspective. If you could help that type of healthcare environment, what's some ideas that you have for it? That you think it doesn't even have to be like specific, concrete things, but just generally, security could be an asset this way. And I'm just kind of curious to pick in your brain.
I say the biggest thing is, and you touched on it, was communication. I think that there's a lot more training and time that could go into communication and just developing that skill set. Like, that was something. When I was working, especially frontline, I spent a ton of time just trying to improve my communication. I read verbal judo. I just read all kinds of different books just to really just like a sponge, just taking as much as I could and improve the communication, because I seen what a positive impact it had on me being able to do my job if I could communicate effectively.
Did anybody ask that of you, or you just took that on as your own initiative?
I just did it. I'm someone who, if I'm stagnant too long, I'll get bored quickly. I'm someone who's always, I like to learn. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So even, when I've been in positions through my employment, if I hit a certain ceiling, I'm either going to be looking for something else or looking for a way to grow where I am, or just, and that's kind of why I came to actually Sentinel in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So the person who introduced me to Sentinel was Shanna Jones. We used to work together at the hospital. Yeah. And, for me, I had a lot of experience in healthcare. I had some experience outside of healthcare in the security industry, but I needed to do something different. I wanted to learn more. if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you guys, I hated doing events. I absolutely hated
Yeah.
it. It wasn't for me. It wasn't for me at all. Like, I'm used to that healthcare environment.
Yeah.
Like, you talk about the people who you have their lawyers on speed dial. Like, I don't want to deal with that person, right?
Yeah.
I want to deal with the person who's trying to get better. I want to make an impact on somebody's day, but I needed to get more experience. So, I did it for a few years to
great.
learn, and I enjoyed the team that I worked with, which helped a lot.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But no, events, I hated events. I hated being up late. I hated, being around the loud music, being around drunk people. I don't drink. So when people are drunk and, behaving a certain way, it can ruin my night fast.
Right.
I just don't want to
Yeah.
be around that.
Yeah.
So, but for myself, I just wanted to really broaden my experience. I know some people who've worked in, only one field, and then, something changes, their company goes out of business, they
Yeah.
lose their job, and then there's nothing for them to fall back
They're
on.
irrelevant,
so
right?
even the last company I worked with, I had oversight of a lot of pieces of the operations, and for a year, it was just for me it was absolutely terrible. I hated it, but I learned so much
Right.
Yeah.
that I have so many skills now. If something was to happen to the company I work for now, I have a lot of experience that I can
Yes.
fall back on. So that was more what it was for me, was just getting that learning, because I do enjoy learning. I do love learning, but again, I was able to take something out of those experiences.
That's good, man.
Now-
yeah. Go on.
Sorry, I wanted to give one example as well from a healthcare setting. So there was, again, I talk a lot about being a frontline security officer working in the emergency department. There was one specific example that stands out for me. There was a family who came in, and a gentleman probably in his 40s came in and asked me if I could help him with his family member who was in the car. They were just having trouble getting out of the car. Normally, that was something that security didn't do. A lot of people shied away from it because liability.
Right.
But, I could see the nursing staff were busy. Even the paramedics that were there had their hands full with the people that they were dealing with. So I was like, whatever. I grabbed a wheelchair. I just held the wheelchair and kind of helped them get the person into the chair, and then wheeled them in. We got them triaged. I warned I grabbed the triage nurse and said, listen, this person doesn't look well. And, the family was very appreciative. And I remember I'd gotten their information just because I had left my post to help them. So this was a Friday. It was a Friday night shift because I worked overnights as a, kind of the shift lead. The Saturday now, one of the things that you're sometimes responsible for as healthcare security is the morgue. So, in my capacity, it was just providing access, doing the paperwork. So I remember I opened up the cooler for the transportation person who was bringing down the deceased. I got the death certificate and filed the paperwork, and I'm looking at the name. I'm like, this name looks familiar. I look back at my notes from the day before. I'm like, this was the same person. So they had passed away. And then on the Sunday, the funeral home came to do a pickup. And again, it was the same individual. So, we really have a really unique position in healthcare security, the way you interact with people. So, this is this person's first interaction at the hospital was with me. I was the representative for the hospital for their perspective. And when they left, I was the person who kind of, I seen them off, even though it was a very unique set of circumstances. But that's not something that you really get to experience, I don't think, in any other sector of the security industry.
Yeah. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you when you say that? So you kind of gave a series of events. Give me an idea. How did that impact you, getting that, that kind of beginning to end with them?
Well, at first, when I on the Saturday, when I had seen that she had passed away, like, I kind of took it to heart, because it was like, I remember when the family brought her in, there was, she was visibly ill, and, the family was really appreciative when I helped them out. And the nurse was like, okay, you're going to be okay. And it looked like she was doing well. She was admitted to the hospital. They actually got her up on a floor. So, like, I had known enough to know that much.
Right.
And I was like, okay, cool. She's going to be okay. So that, the dire situation looked like it got better. And, but yeah, then she, obviously her health deteriorated. She passed away really quickly. It's kind of similar to what happened with my dad. I've talked about this a lot with people because how it affected me, but my dad passed away last year in September.
Yeah, sorry to hear.
Thank you. But I remember it was going into the Labor Day long weekend. I got a call from my stepmom, because he is in Nova Scotia, that, that he had a heart attack and, wasn't really given a positive outlook.
Okay.
He had, he had been without oxygen, they said, for at least 8 minutes. Some of the doctors said it was as many as 20, which, I don't know how that's even possible. But anyhow,
Right.
and for me, it was like, it was difficult, because the decision was, from the information that I got, was like, he was done, basically. He was being kept alive. But so for me, it was like, do I I have a family. Do I fly down there and then, I'm going to fly back, bring my family back because, it doesn't look like he's going to make it out of there. Or, so what ended up happening was I flew down there. By the time I had landed, my sister picked me up from the airport. She drove me to the hospital, met with my stepmom there, and she said, yeah, he's making progress. So, it was really positive at that point. Like, he's making progress. He's responding, like he's squeezing our hand when we ask him questions. So, he was doing all right. So this was on a Tuesday. The Wednesday we spent the day with him. He woke up a few times and, he was trying to communicate, but he was intubated, so he couldn't speak, but, he was trying to tell us something. So, again, it's positive because we thought at this point, like, we didn't think he was coming back.
Right.
And then Thursday they were able to extubate him. And, he was good. Like, so for the Thursday we were able to spend the day with him. He was his regular self. Like, he was making jokes and, and then they were talking about getting him up to a step down unit. Like, he was making progress, and the doctors were like, well, he's taking all the right steps. Like, this was something they didn't anticipate. They just thought he was done for. And then 4 a.m. on Friday morning, I guess he took a really bad turn. And, at that point it was like, he's got hours. So we had time just to get down there and, just to be with him in his final moments. So I got to see, I was there when he took his last breath.
Right.
And, it was just one of those unique things, like how caring the staff were. And, when I got there, this was the part that really kind of hit home for me, was the nurse that was just doing constant observation. Her whole job was just to watch him and, chart everything that's happening with him. She didn't see me coming up, but like, she had a tear running down her face. So, they had gotten, so, when you talk about empathy, that's that's it right there. Like, they had really gotten to know my dad in the little bit of time that he was there. And, just to really see the turnaround, like, he was doing so well. And then to just take such a turn, it impacted the staff. So
Wow.
That's the impact that you can have working in healthcare. But
Man.
In those fragile moments, right? You never know, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
But I knew they did everything they could. There was no reason for me to be upset with anybody there. Like, when it was his time, it was his time.
Right.
I think it's something to take away just for, like, I guess because it's its own little entity where, again, because of the nature of why people are there, they don't want to be there. They're there because of a health concern. There's a chance that it could end. Okay, there's some finality to this interaction.
Absolutely.
Now imagine with that lady out front needing assistance with the car. You were too busy. You're frustrated. You dealt with something else. She's like, move your car. Like, imagine, and then the next day you find out that they had passed.
Yeah.
Imagine, like, and that's, I think, again, because it's so pronounced, the stakes are high, so to say, that it's very easy, especially from an outside perspective, to be like, you know what, yes, it makes sense to be really patient, to be really kind, because why people are there. I think it's true to just all life, though.
Oh, yeah.
Because you just don't know that person who pushed past you at the elevator, what news they just heard, or what that lady struggling, trying to drag her 3 kids, and you think, oh, she has no control of them. But you don't know what just happened and why and what they're fleeing from, or what they've just found out about the father, or like, you know, and like sometimes we just, that's what I think the most amazing thing about the word empathy. It's from their perspective. It's literally like, it has nothing to do with you. You are kind of a non-variable, and it's putting their needs and what they're feeling above your own, you know. And if we just did that as everyday people, you know, especially through trying times like this pandemic that we're in, it would make a huge impact, you know, that proactive type of just living, I think, would make a big impact, you know?
Yeah. I'll give you another one from my experience. I remember I got a call to the info desk because there's a guy who's really upset about the smokers in front of the building, because obviously healthcare facilities at this time, you had to be 9 meters from the door if you were smoking a cigarette. Now it's just in Ontario, you can't smoke on hospital property at all. So, you know, at the time I went to speak with this guy, and he was an elderly gentleman, and he just yelled at me for, I don't know how long. It probably felt a lot longer than it was, but he was just really upset about the fact that he couldn't get into the hospital without having to walk through cigarette smoke, because there's people smoking in front of the doors, and, you know, what were we doing? And, you know, I was really patient. I just listened to him. I let him speak, and I just explained, you know, we do our best to be out there, but there is a lot going on at the hospital. There's 4 of us for the whole facility. But, you know, we do our best. I'm sorry that you had to experience this. And then, you know, after he had vented and just had a chance to kind of to calm down a little bit, he's like, you know what, he apologized. Like, it's not your fault. He explained that he had a really tough drive getting in because, you know, it was downtown Toronto. So downtown Toronto traffic in the morning, it can be challenging.
It's real, folks. It's real.
It's real. But he made the drive downtown. Found difficult time parking, and then there's a lot of other things going on as well that really, I think it all just culminated in that one moment where he just exploded on. I happened to be the person that was the outlet for his frustration. But he had a son who was who's going through a certain level of medical school. He was very close to being finished, and I guess he had a brain aneurysm or something wrong with his brain, and that's why he was actually there. So his son was in the car. So he got to a point where he had to take his son, who I'm sure he'd invested his whole life into building up. This guy was going to be a doctor, and then he had a really bad health incident, and he wasn't going to make it, and his father's just basically taking care of him in the final stages of his life. And then also his wife of over 40 years, he had just had to put in a home like a couple weeks or a month before. So all of that was feeding into this situation. He explained all that, and he was like, he was so thankful that I listened to him. Right. Which, I didn't really know what else to do other than just stand there and get yelled at in the time.
Yeah,
but
you could have yelled back. You could have used all your power to make him feel even smaller, right? You know what I mean? That's why I think it's amazing that you did it. I find it interesting. Do you remember every exchange you've had with every single person to that detail? Guaranteed, no. But how come you do? Like, think of all the stuff. You're just kind of verbatim just saying, okay, all these minute details about his life. It's because there was something about that interaction that even if you didn't get the reward of him, you knew that by being patient, this could make it better. Mm-hmm. And it opened up to for him to tell you more. And does that enrich you to think I'm going to be more patient the next time? And it's almost like it builds like a cycle of good versus the reverse, right?
Absolutely. And for me too, this is going to sound kind of weird, but like I said, I'm someone who likes to learn. So I'd always try to take these challenging situations and try to treat it like as a test for myself. I'm like, okay, how am I going to respond when he's finally finished yelling at me? Right. What am I going to say, right? So I'm kind of going through the whole thing in my head. Which
means you're thinking, though, right? Yeah. You're not just emotionally reacting, right? Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's been like an adventure, right? But I look at it from a learning curve to see, what you're doing.
Yeah.
With your podcast, just back to your podcast
right now. Sure.
What are some things that you'd like to see as an objective for 2021 in your podcast? Like, things that you want to kind of dissect and go into,
tackle,
talk
about.
Exactly.
Right.
So there's so many things. So right now, one thing that, as far as the personal development and professional development topics, a lot of people want to hear about leadership. So, just before we did this, I just had a meeting with somebody that's going to be speaking on leadership regularly on the podcast. So obviously there's so much to that topic, right? It's such a rich topic. So we'll focus a little bit more on that. Just healthcare security topics as they come up. I don't really talk about workplace violence too much because I have another podcast with Mike Hodges that's dedicated just to that. Okay. So we talk about that once a month. So it really depends. Like if I talk about the things that I have kind of, I guess the podcasts that are in the chamber that still need to be edited and published, we talk about things like crime prevention through environmental design in the healthcare environment. We talk about. I interviewed somebody from India who is a chief security officer at a hospital there, so trying to get more of an international presence as well, and that's something I'm focusing on. This year, one of the things I want to do is learn Spanish, so I've started doing that. Just with IHSS, we have right now a lot of people in the Latin American and South American community who I think could benefit greatly from our resources. So I want to be able to communicate effectively with those individuals
from their home countries, or actually
they're based in South America. I was on a healthcare symposium that they did in October.
Yeah, nice.
Actually, my podcast was a sponsor, so I wanted to just see what it was all about. There was, I think, at one point over 180 people on the actual on this actual virtual symposium. Again, I didn't benefit from it as much because I don't speak Spanish, and it was all in Espanol.
And it's a pandemic, and one day they'll be flying you there, and they'll be going to Chile and going that'd be amazing. Yeah,
but for me, I want to learn Spanish so that I can I can help benefit this community as well, and
that's great,
and really get the information and the resources that we have at IAHSS in their hands.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I mean, I say as new kids on the block to healthcare, people like yourself. We know that this has been something that is part of your identity. You're bigger than it. You're a big boy, but you have like big aspirations, which is incredibly admirable. Just the fact that you take the onus to I'm going to constantly improve myself. I have this time and I'm not going to just make work only about trading dollars for hours of my life. You know, I mean, that's just a great thing for anybody to know and to hear. So, like, I think, man, kudos to you to take your, you know, again, the whole podcasting world. We were talking about it just this morning. It's a kind of like an unbiased platform for people just to share their experience.
Yeah.
And like, what I love is just standard broadcasting and productions and producers. They're still trying to figure out why it's so successful. They really are. They're just
Right.
like, and they're trying to analyze something that is organic. And it's literally like the simple thing. When people like to talk, they like to share their experiences. We've always done it. We've always said, hey, see this berry? Don't eat it or you die. Okay.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Even if it was just down to that basic of survival when we were, you know, without electricity.
That's
okay.
right.
And I just think that, just keep doing that. It's pretty amazing. You know, for us, we want to, again, new kid on the block for healthcare. We know there's some big shoes to fill, and there's a lot of people who've spent decades in this industry, and we kind of want to bring in a new thrust, but learn as much as we can as well.
Mhm.
You know, so for us, it's just like, if anything that we bring to the floor is it's just a fresh perspective.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
Yeah, and there's room for everybody. There's lots of business out there, and not, you know, I don't want to plug any companies, but there's a lot of companies who there's a few companies who really focus on healthcare and do it well.
yeah.
But
nice.
there's always room for others. Like just because company A is effective and, you know, they're effective in this large facility, they may not be effective in the next one, where company B may be the better fit, or company C even may be the better fit.
Absolutely.
Well, you guys heard it. You guys heard it here. Company B and C.
Yeah, whatever. No, but the takeaway from that is, you know, just it all has to be done well.
Yes.
As an industry. I mean, like, this isn't about trying to outcompete the other or win a race. It's just
Right.
for the sake of the families and the everyday people that work there and frequent a hospital. They need to have empathetic protectors, people
That's
that
right.
go in there that make an impact.
Mm.
You know, that they really say, okay, if I'm going to be here for 12 hours, I'm going to make it count. And then maybe they'll have stories to the minute detail that you were saying. I remember speaking with this lady and this gentleman and this family thanked me. It should be that versus why I hate people.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's a guy, I mean, it can wear on you. We know people that, you know, if you deal with the general public, you either kind of have a greater appreciation and love for the fragility of people and their complexities, or it's just, I can't stand people, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like, right? Is it kind of, that's true, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Well-
no. Listen, I'll say as many good examples I've given. There's been examples where it was just that, where I didn't do things properly, where, you know, I maybe laughed in a situation where I didn't, and it turned into a code white versus a versus a de-escalation, right? So
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
more early on in my career, but definitely. It listen, people are complex, so there is a lot to dealing with people on a day-to-day basis, and it can wear on you, like you said. So
Yeah.
it's just understanding yourself and understanding, like, human beings are so complex. It's something that's always just really fascinated me, is looking at all these different situations and scenarios and the things that kind of come from that.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
it just, you know, me and my daughter were having this conversation the other day. Like, she was saying how her friend at school, she's like, I'm not friends with her anymore because she did this at recess. And I was like, okay, so what happened? Like, walk me through the scenario. So she's like, well, you know, we were playing a game and somebody told her that she couldn't play, and then she walked away, and then I went behind her and she didn't see me, and she was saying something bad about me to this other person, and that I told her that she couldn't play. And she's like, it wasn't me. I'm like, well, did you talk to her about it? No. Like, okay, well, what did the person say? I'm like, who said it? She's like, I don't know. It was one of these two boys. And I was like, well, you know, is there a chance that she thought it was you? Is there a chance that, you know, maybe? So she's like, well, you know, and then she thought about it. She's like, well, this one kid, when he yawns, he sounds like me. And I think he was yawning when he was talking. So she may have thought it was me. And then, so like, we kind of,
When he yawns.
Wow, man.
Oh, that's a kid story right there.
but she's like, yeah, so she really dug into it. And then she's like, yeah, so I think she actually thought it was me, but it wasn't. I told her it wasn't. And now we're good again. Right. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, I don't know. It's funny. Like, out of all my kids, she's the one who kind of takes things to heart from people.
Right.
And I can really, when I tell her something like that, she'll actually process it. So yeah, it's just interesting. it's funny, like it's kind of unrelated, but having 4 kids who have the same 2 parents and grow up in the same house, it's just funny how different all of them are, but how the same they are. It's really really interesting.
Yeah.
That's great though. I mean, the principles of that, you walked them through. Play me through the scenario.
Right.
Think it out. Could there be another perspective? You thought it happened this way. Maybe is there other facets at play? Like that, you're basically saying in the nicest way, the world doesn't just revolve around you alone.
Right.
Yeah.
There's other variables. There's other things. Don't always take it personally.
Mhm.
Even still, even if someone has a direct hit to try to make you feel bad, maybe there's a reason. Maybe there's something happening in their family. Maybe, you know, like, I remember my daughter telling me, Abigail, she was saying that there's a boy that acting up in school, and he's acting up. Guess what happened? A week later, his mom passed away. She
Yeah.
was sick the whole time, and he saw her deteriorating
Yeah.
in her health from cancer, and then she eventually passed. And there's this grade 3 kid who's acting up, and everyone's reacting to his action. But there's
Yeah.
a source. There's something there. You get what I'm saying? So, and I just think that, like, if we just, again, for me, I'm kind of talking from firsthand experience. It's almost been focusing on healthcare has been almost like a microscope that's giving me a lens to look at like all life,
Mhm.
and just be like, if it's important here, where it could be a tipping point, Malcolm Gladwell, let's give him a little shout out again, or could I actually like kind of, could there be other variables that I'm not considering? It's important for me to be patient right now, not take
Yeah.
it personally, and be a good person right now. Because what's the trade-off? Okay, I can tell you, I have the capacity to verbally flog someone if I want to. Someone could say something, be impatient, rude. I could check them. I could pound them verbally. Let's just say I don't do it physically, but I'm gonna walk away. I'm gonna feel like crap for a good amount of time.
Yeah.
I'll always, in your mind, because you have a conscience, because you're a person, will constantly play it over. Should I said that? Like, then you'll tell other people. You probably give them like a different version of the
Yeah.
story,
Oh yeah.
right? Because it's a different rendition,
Right.
and it's kind of like it kind of shows, because we're that smart, right?
Right.
We're that complex. We can create a whole scenario that kind of justifies us. And then a well-meaning spouse or someone else, I mean, a good spouse would say you're an idiot,
Right.
Yeah.
right? Okay,
Right.
which we've all probably exed that. Thank
Yeah,
you to our
once
ladies.
once or twice. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. 1997. And like,
I don't know what you're
right?
talking
No, I
about.
know.
Yeah.
But then even just, but then there's that circle that just says anything you say will just be like, oh yeah, because they
Yeah.
don't really care,
Right.
and they'll kind of just say, yeah, man, oh man, if it was me, I would have done the same thing or worse.
Mhm.
Okay, like, and all that, you get all that
Yeah.
jazz, and at the end of the day, you're believing something you shouldn't. You shouldn't have said that to that lady, or
Right.
put down your window and said your piece to that gentleman in his pickup truck.
Well,
Okay?
you even sometimes deceive yourself enough to the point where you actually believe the nonsense that you're saying, right?
Exactly.
But no, I think you gave a good example there, and I always use this example kind of with this topic.
Mhm.
But you want to make sure that you have balance in the people that are around you,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
Like I remember bringing home when I was in grade 9, I had a 95 in the first term of keyboarding.
Mm-hmm. Hey,
As I
nice.
go back enough that we had to learn how to type in school.
Yeah.
But I brought home a 95, and I remember, I showed it to my mom. My mom was super thrilled. And, if I would have brought home a 55 and she thought I tried my best, even if I didn't, if I just told her, yeah, I did my best, she would have been thrilled either way.
Right.
My dad, he's like, you got a 95? He's like, you could have gotten 100 if you weren't lazy. Like, he just ripped into me about this 95, right? So it's just getting the different perspectives.
True, man.
There's a little bit of truth to what my dad was saying. Is
Yeah.
like, it's not like I wasn't putting forth my best effort. I did good because
Yeah.
I picked it up pretty quickly.
Right.
Whereas my mom just thought, you did your best. It doesn't matter. I needed some balance. Like, I couldn't have gone 100% of
No, I know.
going my mom's
And
route.
yeah,
of,
it's like
you
encouragement
you did your best.
Encouragement and expectation. You kind of need
Yeah.
both. That's actually pretty wise to look at it that
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah.
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 That's actually your dad. I love it.
Yeah, it was just like, you could have gotten 100 if you weren't lazy.
Yeah.
Like, he was mad. He was genuinely upset that I brought home a 95.
Yeah, really.
Left 5% on the table.
Yeah.
But,
exactly.
But yeah, no, it's just interesting. Like, even the people who your biggest critics are going to be able to find anything wrong with you. So I think there's always some value in like listening to those voices.
Mm-hmm. Because they might tell you something about yourself you didn't know.
Yeah, there's going
We
to
all
be
have a blind spot.
somewhere there's going to be some truth to something they're saying. A lot of it's going to be
Yes.
nonsense, but there's going to be some truth there. So
That's right.
Yeah.
don't get too high on the good things that people say about you, and don't get too low on the negative things, but
Yes.
just look for the truth that's in there. And
That's smart.
That's good, man. Wise words.
Yeah,
Wise
absolutely.
Words. Brian, right now, just as we wrap up, how do people find you? Can you just maybe throw out
your street
podcast.
address, your street address.
your phone number.
So you can get some
social insurance number.
Yeah,
all
get
that
some
stuff.
belated Christmas gifts.
for both podcasts. How do we find you to subscribe, all that jazz?
Well, say the easiest way to find me. So I'm going to, like, again, obviously I've been talking a lot. I like to tell stories. So the reason why I have my name, I was named after my dad. My great grandmother's Irish, and she spelled Brian wrong on his. She filled out his birth certificate. She spelled Brian wrong. She wrote it the way she said it, which was Brine. So my name's Brine, Brine. If you look for Brine Hamilton, you're only going to find me. I'm the only one.
No way.
Yeah.
So it's a very original name.
Very original name.
Brine.
Just me and my dad. Yeah.
No way. That's
Wow.
amazing.
So Brine Hamilton.
Thanks,
on,
Grandma.
Yeah.
So Brine Hamilton on LinkedIn, Facebook,
Okay.
Twitter.
Okay.
Okay. And from there, they can
Instagram,
find your podcast
TikTok.
and everything, right?
If you go to brinehamilton.com or brinehamilton.com/podcast, that's a link to it. But you can find it on Apple Podcasts. You can find it on Spotify. It's on all the major carriers. So
Okay.
it's easy enough to find. The Healthcare Security Cast and Proactive Security Podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the proactive premise. That's good.
Yeah,
That's
man.
good.
Well, you know what? That was all Mike. So Mike started a blog, the Proactive Security blog.
Okay.
And we connected. He was a guest on episode 3.
Okay.
And I had the idea of, what, we should do a regular recurring podcast about workplace violence.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of, I want to put him out there. So it's me asking him a lot of questions. He does most of the talking, and it's kind of building on what he's already done. So
Right.
we use the name from his blog for the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Amazing.
Man. Well, Brian, thank you so much, bro, for coming down
In the snow.
in the snow.
You know?
The snow behind you. Yeah. Obviously, knowing as much as I know you and learning even more, obviously it's great insight. Really, really want to thank you again for just opening up the idea and the concept of doing what we're doing right now. And I think this is just the beginning, man.
Yeah, that's what I was
think
thinking
so.
too.
Just the
Yeah,
beginning.
absolutely. I think
You know?
we have some ideas. We should put our heads together and think, how can we really really change the game?
That's right.
Yeah.
There's a squirrel over your shoulder right now. What the hell?
No, but that's my thing. Like, the thing I've been really thinking about a lot in the last year or so is just that, like I mentioned earlier, that baseline standardized training for hospital security. I think that's something that needs to happen.
Yeah.
That's
okay,
awesome.
great. Yeah,
That's
we want to
awesome.
be a part of it for sure.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Okay, amazing.
Well, everyone, thank you very much. Brian, thank you. Amazing time on the show. I can't wait for this one to get pushed out. Mike, as always, thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And we'll do this again shortly, man. We'll do
Thank
this
you.
again.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome. All right, guys.
Be blessed, guys. Stay safe, everybody.
Yes. Stay safe.
Peace.
Make sure to drop by next week. And don't forget to subscribe.
Let's go!
It's time to give a shout out to our sponsors. This podcast is brought to you by Sentinel Security Plus. For all your premium security needs, visit SentinelSecurityPlus.com.
And The Substance Group for all your integrated marketing solutions. Visit TheSubstanceGroup.com.